Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time. It's so good to be here again. That means that my talk last year was good, or they didn't find anyone better. So I don't know what's better. But I'm here back, and I will talk with Clara about this amazing topic. So Figma as a bridge between design and development. We will go into deep. We will try to show you like practical things to what you can go back to your companies next Monday and implement them as fast as possible. So about me, I'm a CPO in Dotted. You're doing marketing automation, but basically I'm a lecturer mentor and I'm Friends of Figma CZ leader. So I'm hosting a meetups and I train like hundreds of companies how to basically officially work with Figma on their design and development team as well. And with me, I have, this one, sorry, I just need to remember the presentation correctly. We want to like basically shape the situation where we are working, because we want to bring you two different point of views on this problematic. From my point of view, as a CPO with very small startups, right? So right now we have 2 designers, 2 front-end developers and 4 back-end developers. And Clara, she has a completely different environment. I think it will be very interesting for you to see these both worlds combined, because we agree on a lot of things, but we disagree on a lot of things as well. So it will be a little like, conversation during our speech. Okay, so Clara.
Indeed, that's me. I came with Shimon to, talk and maybe a little argue with Shimon at some points as well, but we agree on 95%. I'm a senior product designer at an amazing cybersecurity company called SentinelOne, go purple. I'm also a board member. We are both members of the association, while Shimon is essentially the head of Figma community. I'm at the board of the association itself. And as Shimon, I also lecture and mentor. I'm in, for example, in Holkey's marketing, if Czechs know, or in UXwell, which is a very great program for aspiring UXers. In the past, previously I worked at Oracle, which is a huge corporation. And before that, like a completely different environment, I worked at a Czech agency called Etnetera, where I worked for other Czech companies such as O2 or ČSOB and others. And at the moment, I mostly work as a product designer within like a sub-product line of SentinelOne. So I work within like mid-sized team where I'm the only designer, but I work with a lot of developers, and I'm also within quite a large design team, including tech writers and researchers. We're almost 50 people, though at Oracle it was almost 1,500, lol. But yeah, completely different environment. A team within an enterprise, and organizationally, I work with many other designers, which also makes it quite interesting. Shimona, it's yours again.
Cool. So basically, you want to start with the simple statement that what we find out during our mentoring career a lot, that some designers, mainly junior designers, think that the Figma, the design, the file is the goal of their work, right? So that's the finished thing. We need to have it the perfect as possible with every annotations and every variance, and the Figma is the end product. Actually, it's not. The end product is the production code, is the thing what you can use on your laptop, what your customers can use. That's the product, what you should basically aim for. And if your whole head will be built around that you wanna create the best and amazing Figma design file, it won't work. And that's the start of our topic, because it's very important to have in your mind that the goal is the production code, because when you will have it, you will completely change, or maybe you already know that, but some people will completely change the point of view on handoff and on talk with the developers, because the end thing is your goal. Basically, when we were creating the talk, we debated a lot, what is the secret sauce, right? What's the pillars of success of design-dev collaboration? Because there are multiple topics, you can read multiple articles, you can ask even ChatGPT and she will create something. But we ended up with 2 main pillars. First of all is communication, right? Of course, everybody knows we need to communicate. But like, it's usually, even if you have design and developers, and even if they are from a same country, like Czech Republic, for example, they have 2 different languages. And it's the same thing as I will be speaking in Czech and you will be speaking in Spanish. we won't understand each other. And it's very similar between design and dev. It doesn't mean that some of the party is wrong. They are not. But they have a different language. And you need to invest a lot of time and to be aware of this reality to basically create a communication and align between these two teams, because without it, as I mentioned, you'll be speaking a different language and they won't understand you. And usually in the teams that don't understand this, it's starting like, okay, so developers, they doesn't understand anything, they can't do this thing, and the developers are, oh, the designers are creating these unbelievable complex things that we can't develop, right? Because there's a problem with the communication with two different languages. The second pillar is some standards. Everybody loves standards because standards are killing creativity. That's the most usual thing what we heard when we want to implement some standards. But standards are very important. And the level of standards and the efforts to create them is very different between the companies, between their reality in that exact moment. So when Clara has experience with creating the systems for 1,500 designers in Oracle, it's like I don't even know 1,000 people, not even designers. So that's a completely different point of view. But you need to create some standards, and you as a designer should create standards for yourself, even for yourself, not for your team, but for yourself as well. And basically between them, there are 3 topics what we want to basically bring you and talk about. First of all, okay, of course, design system, it's the same as AI and design. We need to talk about them. Organization and annotation, sometimes this step is overlooked because it's not funny, right? Organization is but it's a key for your success. And the last topic is communication standards. So we want to talk about how to set it up, the communications with your development team, or if you are developing with your designer team, because it goes both ways, to basically achieve a success. So let's talk about each of this point and show you practically how Figma can help you with. So first is design systems.
My passion topic, which is very commonly very misunderstood, because it's not it's not anything else but a shared language of designers and developers. Shimon already emphasized that, but unless you speak the same language, like if you go to a corporate, you're also being examined whether you speak English because, well, I assume that in most companies the English is the important language, but you need to speak English to be able to work internationally. And if you as designers and developers want to work together, you need a shared language as well, something that you both sides speak. And no, it's not a Figma UI kit, as so many people think. Many people Google design systems, and they fire Figma community, and they open 5 community files, and they copy the structure, and they feel like they know what the design system is. So no, what it actually is. I assume that most of you knew that it's not a Figma UI kit, and that's why I also assume that you know that this is kind of, the base of it. We have some design tokens, which Shimon talked about last year. Recommend his talk. It's on YouTube. Very common. It's the base. It's the very foundations. Oh, please, it's not atoms. It's 2024. Look it up. Design tokens are the small elements, like the words of that shared language that you need to align on to even be able to speak further. Then you have the components, like the small pieces that you can build the actual UIs with. Then you have patterns, so larger systems of how things actually work in the product. And on the top of this pyramid, and you see it's within circles, we'll get there. There's some page templates, of course, you can describe this a little differently, but let's assume this base. However, this is not all. You need to have good documentation and guidelines to all of these as well. Otherwise, your system doesn't hold together. That's the glue. That's, the manual, the user manual, the book of that language that helps people learn that language. And also, we talked about, Shimon already talked about standards, and processes are a good example of such standards. I'm actually a very process-less person, and I think it's one of my disadvantages. And I'm so grateful that I get to work with people who can do processes which I can, go with, because that's what makes it work. That's what makes it work. But all of that wouldn't work, and that's also part of the design system. And it's the people. Unless the people understand all of this, and unless you have ways to communicate it and align all of the people on all of these, it doesn't work. And if the people don't want to really, if the people don't cooperate, it won't either work. So this all is a design system. Now, okay, we promised Figma. How does it work? How, the part, mostly the inner pyramid, can look like in Figma. So what's my number one tip? And again, something that's a very common mistake is that you have just one large Figma file where you have everything. And as soon as you scale, and I hope that you guys scale, that you don't end up being a small fail startup or something, you do need modularization. So I do recommend separate all those areas of interest to separate files so that you can swap them, so that you can expand them, and you're not limited by one single house for everything. So usually we have files for foundations, we have files for icons. By the way, from pure Figma usability perspective, if you're trying to find an icon, but you have to search through all of the other components and page templates and I don't know what else, it's hard. Like with icons, you can just filter it to the icons, no big deal. Then you have the core UI library. So all of your main components that 90% of the time people will need to use. But if you have like niche cases in your design systems, then you might want to have separate libraries built on top of the foundations and the core UI library that you can optionally add in to your designs, which also helps the speed of the Figma, by the way. And when you have this base, then you can have your project files. And again, better to, as you scale, it's better to separate the concerns. So also separate the project files. And that's where you have. I have a note in comments to say that it's also very important when I talked about people. So here, the people come in access rights. You have to think about how people can access these files and how they can edit them, because it's very easy to mess up a thing by by someone who didn't know what they were doing to everyone else. So modularization, scalability, filterability, this is what you want. Of course, if you're a small project, this doesn't apply to you, but at scale, this is what's advisable. Shimon, how do you have it?
Yeah, so basically, for example, I will go back one slide, thank you. And one quick tip, what we basically find out is, for example, a very big problem with the teams is with icons. Because you can search in Figma, and people don't know that if you have a component and you add some text to the description, you can search in it as well. So for example, they are creating icon of a search, right? And somebody is searching for icon search, but it's stored as magnificent glass or something like that. So you can use these multiple words, how people describe something, and add it to your components for very quick filtering and searching. Because when you will do, and this is a very good, basically, a test, right? If you have your teams on Slack or something like that, send them, for example, pictures of icons and ask, so what is it, right? And you will see that even the simplest things will be completely like called different names, which is okay. You can work on like renaming it to basically be in one line, or you can basically don't fight the people and just add these names, and they can filter it and find it as well. About this, so this is basically our Figma in Dotty. And we have a different basically structure how we approach these projects. So you can see that we have all of these parts of the app, like feed exports, campaign settings, CSS program, etc., etc. But we also have a quarterly files. Why is that? Every quarter we fired up a new file. So right now it's Q4 2024, and every design change is in this file for the whole quarter. So it's very easily for me to see what are we working on, what is in progress, what is ready for dev, and stuff like that. And why is it important? Because on each of these files is only production-ready designs. So in these files, you will see only a parity, one-to-one with the production. So if you want to start a new project, let's say I will have a task to redesign some parts of the campaigns, I can be sure that if I download something from it, it will be one-to-one to production. And this is very important because in many companies they start with that if they start doing start some projects, they will go to this file and start like tweak it and stuff like that. But you don't know what is ready, and then you need to go to the production, create screenshots from it, put it in Figma and do it like that, which isn't a best scenario. So we create everything here in the quarterly file. On the end of the quarter, when the things are ready and basically are on production, we will move them to their basically like separate things. It sounds time consuming, but it's not. It's one afternoon with a coffee and it will be fine. And we will basically create links between these files and these when they are stored. And this is like a tremendous help for you, because then every designer starts from a production-ready design, production-ready code. It's much more easier for you to basically build a new thing. And then we are working, of course, with this getting started, which is like small file that explain everything. You can have like videos. I will be talking about them later, but you can have the videos in Figma, which are amazing because people are basically like stuck to TikTok and stuff like, so they don't want to read, they want to only watch videos, ideally in 30 seconds format. But so you can do it as well, but we will be talking about that later on.
Yeah. Shimon mentioned an excellent tip on adding extra keywords to your icons. I have a talk where I share a bunch of more tips like that, including this one. So, you can check the QR and, I won't go into detail here. A little self-promo, but here, I hope it makes sense. Before I hand it over to, Shimon talking a bit more further, a bit of reality check that I also feel is often very, especially it's funny that I often find this misunderstanding with people who actually do not have the tech background and are so tech optimistic that they think that Figma is so genius that it'll be aligned with the code one-on-one. Oh no, it's just not exactly the same thing. It's much closer than Sketch ever was. For sure, that's why I like it. As someone who's coded for most of her life, I like Figma because it follows actual logic, but it's not one-to-one. So rather than, obsessing over having everything, one-to-one, it's better to have the solid basis, to have the solid grounding of the shared words being kind of back to the tokens where, you kind of enable yourselves as designers and developers, read the important things the shared way. Not exactly every single thing, but those important parts. And those most important parts usually are the very basic tokens, which are understandable enough for you and for the developers. And if you, for example, don't call your colors that you use in the actual end designs primary 500 or some, I don't know, your name of your font and your weight of the font for typography, but you rather call it the things they actually are. We call it semantic tokens. Again, I would point you to Shimon's talk last year. If you call it, for example, background interactive or things like text link, then it's much better understandable for you, and you know how to use it better, and for the developers, and they don't need to ask you every single thing. If you accidentally forgot to apply it somewhere, they actually also might know what to use. Back to you, Shimona.
Cool. One last thing about the tokens, it's very important to have the naming same between design and dev. This is like very usual problems that the teams will create some very big like design tokens to their standards, but they never talk with the devs, and devs have different naming of things. And usually, I'm a designer, but I'm a big proponent to basic designers should get used to dev things, because developers, there are usually more of them in the company, so it's much easier to switch mindset of designers than 200 developers, right? So just talk with them. So I want to talk what Figma allows to developers, because when I train dev teams, usually they don't know. And I think even if you are designer, okay, so quick question, who is designer here? Hands up. Okay, who is a developer? Great, so okay. So
Nice.
you see, important part of the presentation. Okay, so I will be talking about that, and I think I will basically push you to use dev mode, right? So basically, in dev mode, you can very easily see all of the components, all of the design tokens implemented. You can see them here with, of course, hex values and stuff like that. This is good thing even for designers. I usually like switch to dev mode only to check because you will see all of them like below each other, and it's much easier for you. So you don't need to go somewhere. You will see all of design tokens implemented. You can check the values and you can implement them like that. You can, for example, see that in the layout there is spacing semantic 14 token for a gap, for example, so you can use that as well. You can use component playground. So every component who is in Figma, it has multiple states, multiple variants and stuff like that, multiple properties. And in dev mode, you can use a playground which you can play with the whole component without destroying the design. So if you are creating the component for your library, you can play with that. I encourage even designers to do this. Because when you, for example, doing design critique and stuff like that, you will receive some design and you should critique it. And you will like think, okay, is this component the best variant what we have in design system? You can go to the design mode and like destroy the design, try to play with it, or you can fire up dev mode and you can like try to play with it, right? So you can change the text, you can change icons, you can disable it, you can change different variants and stuff like that, play with light mode, dark mode, etc. and play with that. It's much easier for you to see as the designers, this is the best component possible in this situation for developers to see the whole grail of the component. The next thing is compare changes. You can, for every component in Figma, you can easily compare changes between the component and previous version, so the previous version what was changed, or the main version. And Figma will automatically create a list what was edited. So for example, here you can see that the description was edited from description to some text here, right? You can see that some of the things were removed from this to this component. And it's much more easier, even in like a complex page, see what changed. And this basically boosts the productivity of our dev team a lot because you don't need to circle up things, we change this, or like create links. They will basically go there, compare changes, say, okay, this changed to this, okay, and it's done. So, ready for dev, very easy thing, but if you have very huge files, so sometimes you have multiple steps, we want to work agile, right? Agile doesn't work, it was one of the presentation, I think. But like we want to work like that. So basically, you want to create a little system for basically to letting developers know that this is ready and they can work on it, and this is basically ready for dev. For every section you can just click and ready for dev. They will see it in dev mode. When the thing isn't ready, click it off. Maybe because usually people click ready for dev and then do like a lot of changes, but it's still in the ready for dev state. No, it's not. It's back to basically not ready for dev state. So you can basically switch it up and let them know what is ready.
Yeah, by the way, when we first spoke about this feature with Shimon, I wasn't using it then. And I was like, nah, you know, I'm kind of a conservative person. I rather, you know, duplicate things. I describe the changes. And I don't like to rely on like, you know, paid features on Figma. But I must be honest, this was a game changer when I tried it because like I ran into my own problem. I had a developer who actually implemented something that was work in progress because we were just, you know, I was just working on the same page and he thought that was the newer version. And that's where I actually did agree with him to start using this feature. And it was really helpful because actually the compare changes feature works actually with this. If you're using this, you can annotate the changes and he just knows that it's only ready for dev when it's actually the green flag, not the yellow one where I kind of broke things. So I keep it in one place and we can, it really does improve the communication there.
This is good even for designers, because if you have a large file, so you can have multiple sections there, and if you click it on ready for dev, in dev mode, you will see only the highlighted things which are ready for dev, which is very good even for me. So if you have like a large project, it's very easy for me from a managerial standpoint of view, see what is ready, right? And I can assume, okay, so we are in 30% of the project or 50% of the project because these pages are ready. So you can use it even as a designer to see what is basically done and what's not.
Yeah, by the way, we don't have much experience with this yet, meaning me or Shimon, but I took this screenshot from an IBM article, but I start seeing people experimenting with this feature called Code Connect, which is really cool for those little components. Actually, when I talked about that the code and design will never be aligned one-to-one and talked about tokens, it pretty much does apply to components as well. Like, components are another thing that you just should be aligned on, that you should use correctly. If the structure of the auto layouts is then a little different than the actual code, that's the things that don't matter. But the common terminology, being the tokens and the components, is what's important. And Figma now allows you to connect your code, quite self-descriptive, right? And it allows developers, actually, you cannot really do it for complex things, but for simple things like button, for example, you can actually set your code base in Figma so that when a developer is in the developer mode, they can actually copy the actual production-ready code with all the properties and overrides correctly set up, and it would just work in the code if you set it up correctly. So just so you know that this feature now exists, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. One last thing, basically, to Code Connect, like Clara mentioned it, but it is connected to the properties of the component. So it's not the basic code, like the default state. It will be with everything, with the icons, with the different states and stuff like that. So it can be very powerful if you have, for example, because buttons sounds easy, but buttons are very complex. So it will be much more helpful for you if you connect it. If you have a design system team, they can connect it, and your developers, they will have same naming of the components in Figma and in their code, and they can basically easily copy it. But one thing, you need to be rich, because this feature is only for organization and enterprise level clients on Figma, not for the professionals. So if you are a peasant like me, you won't have access to it. So basically, why to use dev mode in five simple points. You can easily copy tokens and variables, very needed if you want to have the same language between design and dev. You can play with the playground, so you can see the component in the whole shape. You can compare changes, which will save you sanity and a lot of time. You can put things ready for dev, and you can use Code Connect to have a production code in Figma, right? So it will make you easier to see what is the component and how to use it. Okay, so very quickly, Token Studio. Some people who knows me knows that I am a big fan of the Token Studio. Clara hates it, so that's the reason why I put this here. It doesn't matter what is in the table, because it's a complex debate, and I can have a 4-hour talk only about that. But the thing, what is important is the last line. For me, the best explanation between Figma variables and Token Studio is this. Figma variables are amazing Swiss knife. It has a butter opener, it has a knife, it has scissors, it has everything in it. But everything is like, eh. So it is good, but it's not the best. No. Token Studio is a Japanese knife. It's the best knife what you can have, but you can't open the bottle with a knife. You can't, I don't know, have a saw in it to saw some wood or something like that, what you have in the Swiss knife, but it's the best knife what you can have. And this is the same with basically what I think about that. So most of the cases you can play in Figma variables, and you can do even other things like translations, very complex prototypes and stuff like that. But if you want to create some hardcore tokens, I still think Token Studio is better.
Anytime we argue about that, and this is one of our very recurring arguments, we come to the fact that Shimon has come across very, very niche cases, which I still think are kind of solvable with good old Figma variables as well. But I've worked in 2 big companies already, and we, we're doing good with variables, but if you're a huge multi-brand with niche cases that you need to solve, then yes, I haven't been at the cases that Shimon has, and it's possible that Token Studio might be the answer for you. Anyway, let's move on to how to prepare the files, actually. So I think there's like 3 basic types of outputs that designers can have in Figma. And that's flows, so descriptions of how some user stories work. Screen anatomy, so actual descriptions how, and that's a common case in enterprises where actually it's not about ordering a pizza, so I have like 20 screens where I get to couriers at your door, but actually complex enterprise screens that you need to describe, and components. Flows, as I said, it's really like those classic stories so that the developer can understand what are the actual steps and how the user gets from point A to B. Designers in Figma, please don't have messy files. Please organize the flows in a Z pattern so people can use the N key shortcut to go through the screens. Then we have the screen anatomies, and as I said, that's like descriptions of how the different parts of the screen work. That's very useful when you really can't show it on flows, but rather really need to describe the functionality of the screens. And a quick tip from us, actually.
So basically, we in the design, we have this prepared component, which is designer node, where designers can give some added information to the design, which is important for them or even for developers, right? So basically some documentation strictly next to the design, and you don't need to keep documentation in Confluence, for example.
Exactly, have the context where the context actually is. My own tip to that is that what I often see is that people don't understand what developers need to know and what's kind of your node. So my quick tip is that I like to visually differentiate between that. So when I was creating our components to annotate screens, I'm using model-space font for the things that I want developers to read, so the actual get to the gut functional things. And when I need to leave a note for myself and I need to have it visual there, I have it as sticky notes that look different, and that I tell my developers you can ignore those. Those are my notes, and when I really end my design, I even try to clean them up, but differentiate those. Speaking of differentiation, components are not differentiate your components that you're using to kind of be more efficient in Figma, and the components as in the functional parts that have their functionality and their behavior that developers need to implement separately. Often I see designers who don't really understand the difference, just having one large section called components where everything is messed up and undocumented. Do document the actual functional parts for the developers. It's extremely useful. That's what developers actually do. There's a lot of developers, so if you have a neighbor designer, you can tell them, right?
Yeah, variant annotation, many times when I open up big Figma files from junior designers, they have every screen for every variant, right? So they are changing a little input below on the page, and they have 20 of these pages, same with the only single input. So you can create these variant, basically components that we have only a single page of design, and then we have lines from it and show them. This is the variant of the states, what they can be here. So it's only one page with a lot of these variant states, but it's not the duplication of the same page with a change of a text, for example.
Yeah, very important. And to highlight it once more, the local designers, the local components for you aren't the same as what Shimon just described. So think systematically, look at what's getting repetitive in your screens, and not at those helper components, but what actually has some bespoke behavior, and document it separately. Very important. By the way, you might have noticed this is like a FAQ that we assumed. But you might notice that we are not really talking about using the built-in annotations in Figma, that we were talking about our own annotations. It's because that Shimon and I share a belief that every team has their processes and their way of working. And if you're designing your own annotation kit, that allows you to really adapt and design for your actual team and your processes and habits. And also a very practical reason, and even if you're on a free plan, people will see it even without Devel dev mode. Couple of organization tips. We already talked about it. Make it clear what's ready for developers and separate what's actually your designer playground and what developers should actually look at. How I like to do it, I kind of learned that at Oracle and at Sentinel, to really differentiate in pages what's really like the handover, I'll get there, pages which are properly marked as ready for developers. Then I personally like to keep snapshots of different demos and the feedback I got to them as a separate section in the Figma. And then I have my own playground where I just don't want people to look at. Where's my mess, which I stand by, but I don't want to be judged by.
Cool. This is a short, only a screenshot from the quarterly files, right? So we have like a quarterly file with all of the things that we work on. Some of them are already moved, and then we move them to their like respective production-ready files where they can see usage of history of feature usage is basically here, and was moved from the quarterly file there.
Yeah. Also a note important, often I see people really like using prototypes. Prototypes are great for testing, prototypes are great for demos, but prototypes are not great for developers. For developers, developers, you can provide your opinion, but really try to make a documentation. That's why we have pages, that's why it's a canvas. It's something that you can actually read through, not have to click through and understand the documentation. Quick tip, kind of a corporate one, but if you have a design system and you're really a huge team, you can implement a process where you actually check the correct usage of the base elements I already talked about, and ensure that it's readable for developers and doesn't add to implementation costs.
Cool.
Last part
about some communication tips. What do you want to share with you? What you can push your designers to do? So first of all, Loom for every design. Loom, I don't know if you know, Loom is basically an app where you record a quick video, it's automatically syncs to the cloud, and you can embed it into Figma. It's much better than create a documentation and you'll be like writing anything. Push your designers, or if you're a designer, try to use it. Record the flows for the developers. Like basically jump on a quick call and basically go through the workflow, show them everything, explain the variants, etc., etc. It will be much more easier. You can go back to it, which is the best thing. The worst thing is we will have a meeting when we will basically provide it. Yeah, I know we need, but we have a time. It's an important topic. Don't hurry. So basically, yeah. So you won't forget from a meeting. Maintain a changelog. You can maintain changelog even in Figma. This is done by hand. It's not some app that will do it automatically. But the large changes, we basically have a changelog in Figma for the design. So if something is removed, it's added with the links, for example, to Jira or Confluence, maintain it in Figma. It's much more easier to have it in Confluence or someone like external source. Only the person who created the comment resolves it. This sounds like stupid thing, but it's a true thing. Usually when somebody is creating a comment, you need to change this, designer goes, change it, and mark resolve. And the person who created it, he or she doesn't have any clue that this change is already implemented. So if you comment everything, someone at Devel is basically do it. You as a person who created the comment will check it and resolve it. It's a simple thing, but very powerful. If you are starting a new project, set the notifications from everything to just mentions and replies. In most of the cases, developers won't do that, and then they basically start ignoring every notifications from Figma because they have like 500 notifications per day for every comment in the file. So please push yourself, your clients, everybody in the world to put just mention and replies. But remember, then you need to mention the people, so add name of the people, right? So, yeah.
I actually don't do, I do have set up my notifications. I don't like using comments that much, actually for the reasons mentioned. But for example, I don't really record these looms. That's, Shimon's tip. But what we do agree on, this is, kind of controversial on purpose. We're getting to the end of our talk. But I like to say that design handoff is bullshit. It's not that I don't believe in handoff or that I don't believe in cooperation. It's that I don't like when people think that handoff is a one-off thing. That's where I have a problem with the word handoff, when people use it like that. Actually, what's the core, what really we want to deliver here is that, and Adri already talked about this in her amazing talk earlier today, that it's a continuous communication right from the beginning. It's not that design does something in silo and then throws it at an development and thinks it would get developed. No, there's no single point of handoff. There's only a collaboration between designers and developers. So please, designers, you have to support your developers. Show them your designs early, and then when developers start developing, be there, be online for them. And I promise that you will not handle all the cases. I promise that you'll have things that the developers truly can't do, and work together how to resolve it. Because, as we already said in the beginning, what matters is the production. And actually, the source of truth is not the Figma, but the code in production.
Yeah, so basically developers and designers be there for each other, work together, because your work isn't in Figma, your work is in production, and that's our talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We ran over time because Shimon talks a lot.
No. We have time.
Yes, we do, and we have some questions in event here.
I'm kidding.
So the most voted one was this one. When AI are going to replace people on the
People.
do you have any personal estimation?
Estimation for what? When?
Yeah.
So I hosted UX Monday between designers and developers about this topic, and the good thing was that the developers agreed that they will be first. So that's a good thing that you already know, most of you. But I don't think that Scott Gilway have a very good thing that AI won't replace people, but people with AI do. And I think it will be like that. So all of these handoffs, all of this documentation and stuff can be made very much quicker with the help of the AI. For example, there is an AI feature in Figma already to rename in layers, right? So we used to spend hours to renaming layers in components. Right now it's done automatically. So that will help you. But I don't think that AI will replace it. And I will say one word why I think that it will replace us if the client or PMs or the management of the company can gather all of the necessary data for the AI to do the job. In my short career, it never happens like that. And it will be same for developers. You don't have any time in your life, you have 100% of your design ready with every state, everything connected to your technical debt and stuff like that. So it won't be like that, but it can help.
I actually think that will be replaced are people who only, who actually work like what the AI does. The AI learns something kind of a brute force way, if you know how LLMs work, and then kind of replicate it, stitch it together. If people are only stitchers, then I think those will be who will be replaced by AI. But your additional human value and your creativity, and we can have philosophical debates that AI is actually creative. No, it's recycling. Unless you're recycling and unless you're kind of a trained monkey, you have a chance of not being replaced by AI, in my opinion.
Soon.
Soon, yes.
Right, so if you feel like a stitcher, then you've got a problem.
Yeah.
Now, second question. What are your favorite Figma plugins?
That's a good thing. Token Studio. For me. But to be completely honest, I talk about Figma a lot, but to be honest, in my job in .NET, I usually only check the Figma designs and write the comments there. I'm not designer anymore in this case, so I'm not using a lot of plugins. But Iconify to basically download icons is stupid thing, but very quick. Of course, Token Studio. If you are using Figma variables, you need to have some variables to JSON exporter or something like that, or you can write your own. So that can be a thing.
But that's not your favorite plugins. That was about the empathy. So I'll just, but I actually agree with Shimon that I also, in my daily work, I don't actually use much plugins. But when I play around, then one I really love is Noise and Texture by Roger King, who's a design advocate at Figma, and that's just fun to play with. If you're also into visual design, that's like I guess my favorite plugin.
I have one plugin what I love, and I will basically push you to use it. In my experience, when you're presenting something to a client or management, for example, some B2B software with the dummy data, it's not working. And it's much easier to let them download a CSV of real data from a CRM or for some ERP of they use and push it with, for example, the CSV to table and Figma plugin to push real data. Because then they will see their first client on the first spot in Figma. It will be like, oh, that will be like that. Okay, I understand that. And not John Doe on like these random bullshits.
That is a good idea, although I have a rant with them because like usually those plugins that manipulate text are super slow because they don't have a trick that I have on my Twitter. And if you check my own plugin, Data Merge, that runs much quicker than any other plugin that manipulates text.
Good sellout.
Yeah. Check my GitHub, how it's done so it's not slow with text manipulation.
Thank you, Clara.
Yeah. All the things I do for humanity.
Good. Any other questions?
So there are actually a couple of more questions, but we are running out of time. So if you can wait for the people that want to discuss with you a couple of other topics at the Speaker's Corner, I invite all of you to join the Speaker's Corner there to have a discussion with Shimon and Clara, and we will prepare for the last talk of today.
Okay, thank you very much.